Look down at the dog sleeping by your feet. It is, quietly, the strangest friendship in the history of life on Earth. Because long before you were born, long before anyone built a house or planted a seed or wrote a single word, a human and a wolf decided to trust each other. And almost nothing about that should ever have happened. We think of the dog as the most natural thing in the world, a child and their dog, man's best friend. It feels less like history and more like a fact of nature, as if dogs were simply always here, waiting beside us. But the dog is not a fact of nature. The dog is something we made. And the story of how is far stranger than the one you were told. Start with what a wolf actually is. Not the soft cartoon of a husky, but the real animal our ancestors knew. A large, fast, intelligent carnivore with a bite that can crack a leg bone in a single pass, hunting the very same deer and horses that we were trying to hunt. The wolf was not a friend waiting to be found. It was a rival and a threat, an animal that competed with us for every meal and could, on a bad night, turn us into one. Picture yourself there, small and slow and armed with a sharpened stick, and a pack of them watching from the tree line. Walking toward that should have ended exactly one way. And yet, somewhere between 20 and 40,000 years ago, it didn't. This is the part that is genuinely hard to take in. We made friends with the wolf before we did almost anything else. Before farming, before villages, before pottery, before metal, before the wheel, before writing. The dog was the first living thing humans ever domesticated, and it was not close. Thousands of years before anyone thought to tame a sheep, or a cow, or a stalk of wheat, we already had dogs. The oldest alliance we have is not with a crop or a tool, it is with a predator. We know how old, in part, because of the graves. At a site in Germany, archaeologists found a dog buried alongside two humans roughly 14,000 years ago. And when they studied its bones, they found something that stops you cold. As a puppy, that dog had been gravely ill, sick enough that it could not have hunted, guarded, or earned its keep in any way at all. For weeks, it would have been useless, just a small, sick animal needing constant care. And someone cared for it anyway. They kept a helpless creature alive through an illness, for no reason a survival textbook could explain, and then they buried it with their own dead. That is not a tool. That is grief. So how does a frightened, hairless ape end up sleeping next to a wolf? For a long time we told it as a story about us, the clever human taming the beast, stealing a pup and bending it to our will. But the better answer is humbler, and it turns the whole thing around. We probably did not tame the wolf. The wolf tamed itself in order to be near us. Picture a human camp tens of thousands of years ago. Where there are people, there is waste. Bones, scraps, the leftovers of a kill. To a hungry wolf, that is a free meal, if it can only bear to come close. Most could not. The fear was too strong, and they slipped back into the dark. But a few, the calmer, bolder, less frightened ones, could sit at the edge of the firelight and wait. Those wolves ate better. They survived harder winters. They had more pups, and those pups inherited the one thing that had fed their parents, a nervous system that did not scream, "Run!" every time a human moved. Fear bred fear, and calm bred calm. Generation after generation, a line of wolves was quietly sorting itself by a single trait, the ability to be near us without panic. And as they changed on the inside, they began to change on the outside too. This is the uncanny part. The animals that grew tame also grew floppy ears, patchy white coats, curled tails, shorter snouts, and a face that stayed puppyish into adulthood. Tameness and these soft, childlike features travel together, bundled in the same biology, so that selecting for one quietly drags along the rest. They even started doing something no wild adult wolf does, looking straight into a human's eyes and holding it. We did not design the dog the way an engineer draws a machine. We set a single condition, be unafraid of us, and tens of thousands of years did the rest of the carving. What we got back changed everything. A dog hears what we cannot hear and smells what we cannot smell. It guards the camp while we sleep and barks the first warning long before we sense the danger. It tracks wounded prey for miles and holds it until we arrive. It even lends us its warmth on a freezing night. For a fragile animal that survives only by cooperating, gaining a whole second species that would cooperate with us was like waking up with a brand new sense. Some researchers think the dog is part of the reason we are still here at all. That bands of humans who had dogs simply outhunted and outlasted the bands who did not, in a world that also held other kinds of humans who never made that alliance. But the deepest thing the dog gave us is the hardest to weigh. It is the only animal on earth that reads our faces the way we read each other. A dog follows your pointing finger to find hidden food, something even a chimpanzee, our closest relative, struggles to understand. A dog studies your eyes to learn your mood and knows the difference between a glance and a glare. And when a dog and its human simply look at one another, both their brains release the very same chemical that floods a mother and her newborn when they first bond. We did not just breed a helper. Across tens of thousands of years, we slowly grew a creature whose entire inner life is tuned to ours, that would rather be near us than be free. And that is the thing worth sitting with. We took a wild predator, an animal that by every rule of nature should have stayed our rival forever, and over an unimaginable stretch of time, we turned it into something that cannot fully live without us, and does not want to. We made an animal that loves us. No other species has ever done that with another. Not once in the whole history of life. We tend to treat the dog as a small, sweet footnote to the human story. It is closer to the truth to call it the first thing we ever did that was not about survival. We did not need to love the wolf. We did not need it to love us back. But somewhere in the dark, beside a fire, a frightened animal and a frightened ape looked at each other and decided, against everything, not to be afraid. The dog asleep at your feet is what came of that one decision. It is the oldest proof we have that humans wanted more than tools and more than food. We wanted company. And we are still the only species that another species ever chose to love.